Welcome, everybody, to Veloharmony Live. We've got a great analysis going on today. It was very interesting today out there. The results were kind of surprising for some people, but I think that you guys will like what we have. They went from Changé to Laval, the Espace-Mayenne region in France, and it was interesting. The weather changed. Afternoon, Michael. The weather changed during the the event for different people. There were some crashes and so forth, but for the most part, you know, we got a few surprises. Other than that, it wasn't too bad. You can see the route; it's pretty flat. Hey, Dwayne, I see Dwayne's here. It's been a long time since they've had any kind of event in this region. So I think it's been like 20 years since they've been here. So it was kind of nice that they were back in the area. The first really fast guy was Michael Beard. Hey, Jeffrey, welcome. He set the early time, 52.90 faster than the guy before him, 49.4 kilometers an hour, you know, which is pretty impressive. Robert Tengler is here. Hello, Robert. So after he went through, I mean, I've never seen this guy do a time trial, so I was not familiar with him. So it was a nice surprise. Brian McNulty had a crash. I got a little shot of him bleeding on the bike, but he still managed to, you know, hang in there. I mean, he didn't do a great time or anything. He lost about 3 minutes. You know, it's always disturbing when you crash. The tour has been interesting because there's a lot of people that we expected to do great. We had another guy here that said Wout van Aert was going to be in yellow. Well, there was a bit of a disappointment there. Mattia Cattaneo, he was the under-23 Giro d'Italia winner, former winner, and he put on a blistering pace. So he actually ended up unseating Beard from the hot seat by a few seconds. So that was a nice surprise. He dislodged him until Stefan Kuhn came along, the Swiss rider. I think he won some of the time trials in the Tour de Suisse as well. And earlier in the year, he had a real bad crash in the Tour de Romandie. So it's good to see him riding really well. And he ended up dislodging the Swiss rider by 37 seconds. You know, these are the guys that you expect to be at the top. You know, Kung and all these other guys, they've shown that they're consistent in time trials. You know. The surprise actually came from, I was surprised pleasantly that Primoz did not lose a lot of time. You can see he's 25 seconds down there because he was in a lot of crashes. His leg was heavily bandaged, you know, on the other stage. So it's good to see that he only lost 25 seconds or so. So that means that he's still okay because it's still early in the race. You know, so it was good to see that because he has the talent and the pedigree to win this race. So he rode really well, you know, as far as I can see. It was nice to see that. The surprise, in a way, was Pogacar. Pogacar unseated Kung, I believe, by like 15 seconds or so. The reason why it was a surprise is because this course was flat. There weren't a whole lot of hills because he's noted for hilly terrain. Somebody said they're not hearing me. I don't know. It seems the audio seems fine. I'm not sure. Prince Wade says he's not hearing me. Anybody else not hearing me? Because the audio looks fine. Yeah. So check your setup there, Prince Wade. Everything's fine here. I'm looking at all the sensors here. I've got a mixer on here, and everything looks fine. Everybody else is saying so. Check your settings. Should be loud and clear. But what I was saying was that Pogacar impressed me in that I had expected him to do well in a setting where you have rolling terrain or hilly terrain. That's how he got the jersey in last year's tour from Roglic. And so for a flat course like this, and as long as it was 27.2 kilometers or something like that, that's a long time trial. And he actually ended up having the best time. Now, the question is that, did he do enough to get the yellow jersey? You know, because he's in first place. He moved Kung. You can see Kung holding like this. He's like he didn't believe it because nobody really expected him to do well on a flat time trial. He's not a powerhouse in that kind of terrain. You know, so once he won that, he got in the hot seat waiting to see what the other guys would do. It was kind of like, okay, what are we getting? This is our guy. We had one of our legends here that said Van Aert would get the yellow. He's a great time trialist, but it's hard to know how the body will perform on any given day. And with everything they've been through on that team, with all the crashes and whatever else, he may have had to do a little more work, maybe getting Primoz back into the pack and all of that. You don't get that on film. Paulie Longa is here. Hey, my brother. You know, so it's kind of like with all the work he's done, I think that he performed really well because he's like 30 seconds off the pace. He can ride better than that, but who knows what's going on with him right now. It doesn't really kick him out of the tour or out of contention per se, but I think that he just had like an off day from expectations. You know, so it's kind of like, you know, don't put a whole lot on there. Any given day, the human body is hard to predict. So, yeah, it was a surprise because Van Aert was one of the guys that we expected to be there, but he was off the pace. You know, so it's kind of like, okay, we'll see what else happens once they get out there. So Pogacar won the stage, but now Alaphilippe here lost about a minute on there. But the nice surprise was Mathieu van der Poel because he has not done this length of time trial before at this level. And then being in a yellow jersey, he was able to remain in a yellow jersey by his performance in this time trial. So Pogacar won the stage, but Mathieu van der Poel kept the yellow jersey because of his performance. So you can see Pogacar is 8 seconds behind. So it's kind of like everything's very tight. Now, Mathieu van der Poel is not likely to win the Tour because of his body type. So for once they get into the high mountains, he can't really keep up with the so-called pure climbers. He's a strong all-arounder, but maybe later he will focus on Grand Tours or whatever. But at this point, I don't expect him to be in yellow through the mountains, per se. You know, so the fact that Pogacar is in second place, Van Aert is just 30 seconds behind. So he's right there. Alaphilippe's 48 seconds, you know. So you've got all the top guys that we expected to be there. I think Carapaz is also in the top 10. It's kind of good to see that, you know, because this race has been crazy this first week. I did some reading on some of the articles, Cycling News Weekly, and the interviews, especially with Peter Sagan. And that's another reason I like that guy. He's not a diplomat. And so I guess he was in a setting to where he could speak freely. And what he said about yesterday's protest was, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, He said the rider's mindset needs to change, meaning that we have to take care of each other. You can't just go out there and just ride like crazy, similar to what I was saying. What he's saying is, what are you protesting? Basically, we're the ones taking risks and riding like maniacs and endangering other riders. Because if you think about it, you got GC riders that are going for the whole thing, and they try to stay near the front. They're not there to sprint. But these sprinters need to be aware that they can't just sprint like kamikaze style. You got to think about everybody else. Just like when we're in our group rides, you call out potholes and you call out other things and you warn other riders. They should be doing that. Then, I don't remember the name of the other cyclist, but I was reading through some articles. I go to the Euro sites and I read some of the stuff because they have access to these guys. Another rider said, and I think Phil Liggett mentioned it on one of the broadcasts, he said that a lot of these guys are not very technically skilled, meaning bike handling. A lot of these new riders, he said they were grabbing for brakes. And what that phrase means is they panic and they start grabbing for brakes. And now a lot of these bikes have disc brakes, so they're stopping. This is the thing now. So people are saying, are disc brakes causing a problem? No, disc brakes are not causing a problem. If you reach for brakes, it doesn't matter whether you got disc brakes or rim brakes. When they say reach for brakes, what they mean in the Peloton is you're braking too hard. I talk about it all the time when we're riding where, you drift to just kind of slow down. They're saying that these guys are overreacting. They're panicking. Because of what he said, this rider said, the lack of technical skills. He said they spend a lot of time training. We used to do the same thing where we'll bump each other in the grass and practice how to react from bumps. He said these guys are not spending time, the newer riders, learning how to really handle the bikes. And you guys remember what I was saying even before the tour, that I felt like they were crashing too much for pros. They just seemed to fall too much. So when I heard that, Phil Liggett mentioned it, and I went and read another article. It just began to make sense. Yeah, you can go fast, but you need to be able to handle the bike when it's wet or you're cornering or whatever. All of that plays a factor. You can't just ride like your eyes are closed. So that's something to keep in mind. They need to start focusing on bike handling, technical abilities. Because Sagan is one of the best bike handlers, but what can he do when somebody falls right in front of him? The laws of physics apply, So he was not very happy about it. I mean, he did go to check on Caleb Ewan after he had been laying there for a while. But he was saying that the protest didn't make any sense because they need to, he called on the organization for the cyclists, they have their own little body to talk to the cyclists. It's not the tour guys necessarily. It's not the organizers. It's the riders. It's a different mindset, So that was kind of cool to see. But anyway, what I wanted to close here on this part of saying was that the next stage goes from Tour to Chartreux. So it's like this stage, this was the first place that our man Mark Cavendish won his first Tour stage. So it might be another opportunity to see something glorious again if he's able to win. You can see it's a flat stage. That's for tomorrow. And hopefully he'll get another one. But this is where he won his very first stage in the Tour de France from day one. So that's kind of cool. So I'm looking forward to checking out the details come tomorrow, But I just wanted to say that the riders themselves they have a rep to protect. They need to show us that they are true professionals by staying upright more. There needs to be a valid reason why you crash. Not every little hiccup you falling off your bike. If that happened to us, man, we wouldn't be able to keep up. Imagine those carbon frames I showed that had the stays snapped. You know how these things are expensive? Unless you have your bike insured, that should make you think twice before you go race a carbon frame. So it's kind of like, so it was good to see here. Let's see what some of the comments are on here. Let's see here. Dwayne says Van der Poel has shot. Yeah, Van der Poel rode that time trial really well. And, you have to realize his background is in cyclocross, and he spent a lot of years, winning, being successful in that. So he's relatively new to the road scene. And so it takes a little bit of time to adapt. It's a slightly different discipline, but, hard is hard. But he's got to learn how to do it because the time trial is all about power and pacing. And he seems to be picking it up, pretty easily because, he was able to stay in a yellow jersey. That was no small feat, so it was kind of good to see. But I'm looking forward to what else would transpire in this tour because it has been interesting so far. But right now, we're at the point where the classification is set to where the tour has really brought the cream of the crop to the top. You got Van Aert, you got Pogacar, Alaphilippe. I'm not mentioning Van der Poel because I don't expect him to contend too much once they get into the high mountains. And I think he's already said that. There was another race that he did earlier where I don't know if it was one of the was it a Flanders or something where he won on that last climb. He's just not built for that at this point in his career, and I don't know if that's a goal of his or not. So he's going to stay in that jersey for as many. I expect him to keep it tomorrow because it's a flat stage. But I think once they get into the first mountain stage, we'll see how long he's able to hold on because he's carrying more kilos up those climbs than the lighter guys, and he has to put out more watts per kilo to keep up for a longer period of time, and it's just harder. It's just a body type kind of thing, kind of like the worlds. Remember when Sagan won the 3 world championships in a row, and then they had one where Alejandro Valverde won that one. It was so steep that I think towards the last few laps, Sagan basically just was not even riding anymore. He was just kind of waving to the crowd because it just did not suit him. That's the thing about cycling. You have to pick your spots. Dwayne says Caleb's jump speed caused his own crash. He was just reckless. He was trying so hard to win. I mean, I know he didn't intend to crash, but he was a little reckless. He basically hit that guy's wheel, Milier, and there was nothing he could do about it. He went down hard. Nobody crashes a bike and breaks a collarbone on purpose. So yeah, it was accidental, but he's got to be a little more cautious. That's what Peter Sagan is talking about. He said the riders need to take care of each other, basically. I'm paraphrasing. It's on them to be cautious. These guys can set the courses, but it doesn't mean you need to ride like you have no common sense. And these young guys are all excited. They're in the biggest race of their lives, and they're taking too many risks. The more experienced riders are not riding like that, but they're having to share the road with all these other guys. And usually it has been the case. The first week has been crazy throughout the history of the tour. But I just haven't seen this many crashes to where it's affecting the outcome and who's going to really be able to compete. These guys put a lot into getting ready for these races. And so it's sad to see these, So it's something that we need to just watch and see what they do about it because it's in their own hands. They're the ones riding the bikes. They're in charge, So it's kind of, but that was good to see. I mean, good performances today. These boys, it rained in certain parts, depending on who were out there. So the roads got a little slippery, So, there weren't too many people falling, but it does affect how fast you can go through the corners and all of that. And but the top guys, I was very surprised that Pogacar won. I expected Kung to hold out because he was there for a long time in that seat. And I think everybody kind of felt the same way. It was a surprise because in his own country's time trial, I think he only came 3rd in the national time trial. They usually have their nationals just like we do in the U.S. in June, so everybody can display the jerseys. And so he was only 3rd, so they really didn't expect him to do that well on that course because it didn't suit him, So that's it. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. I'm glad you guys were able to join me for this wrap up of the highlights on this stage 5. Looking forward to stage 6. So we'll see you tomorrow at the same time. And in the meantime, try to get your Ks in and be safe out there.